Good morning, class. Let's continue with our subject expository preaching, and now we have come to the last steps. We have left only 6 and 7 steps, and these are very easy steps now. Okay, these are very easy steps now. What you have to do is you have to just go revise all these steps and follow. Step number 6 and 7. Step number 6 is structure the sermon. Now, structuring the sermon, it's very easy now when you understand, or because your works has been done, your all the works that you're supposed to be done, the raw materials that you are supposed to be collected have been collected, and now it has been already preached. Now you have to just bring them together and beautify it. Okay, that's all. Now let's read your notes. Of course, I will not explain much from your notes. I will give you the easiest one from the example. Okay, we'll just go through it. All sermons, generally speaking, divided into 3 moments: introduction, body, and conclusion. Structure the sermon relates to all 3 moments and to each moment. The process of developing these moments separately and together is structuring the text. Now, all sermons, generally speaking, divided into 3 moments: in introduction, body, and conclusion. Okay, so structuring the sermon relates to all these 3: the introduction, your body part, and your conclusion. Everything depends upon how you structure the sermon. Okay, so structuring the sermon becomes very vital, but to do this one is very easy. Again, to develop this one and to put it together, it is very easy. You have your notes over here, but I will just give you the simple way of structuring the point. What you have to understand is, okay, now what you have to understand is step number 2, structuring the text. When you structure the text, it is very hard to do that things because it is not an easy task, okay, by the way. But once you structure your text, it is very easy for you to structure your sermon because your sermon is just to contemporize from the text. So step number 2 and step number 5 helps step number 6. Step number 2 and step number 5. Step number 5 is what? You are contemporizing, you are making a sermon, CPS, okay, central proposition of the sermon. So step number 2 is structuring the text. Step number 3 is central proposition of the text. Now step number 5 is central proposition of the sermon. So when you structure, last time we have seen from Ezra chapter 7 verse 10 how you structure your sermon. Okay, now there should be some theme and thrust, and in theme you ask the question, what okay, for example, if you're preaching on the leadership, so your CPS would be, what should be the decision of a spiritual leader, or what should be the decision of the leader? Okay, that is your theme. What should be the decision of the spiritual leader? Now the thrust is a spiritual leader should now you have to bring from CPT. Okay, a spiritual leader should decide, okay, to study the Word of God, to practice the Word of God, and to teach the Word of God. Now I'm taking this one from Ezra chapter 7 verse 10. Okay, in CPT we see that what Ezra has decided. Okay, Ezra has decided to study the text, to teach the text, to keep the text, to keep this to study the Word of God, to practice the Word of God, and to teach the Word of God. Okay, and now you are contemporizing that one from CPS. We see bridge, that is step number 4, 5 CPS. Now when you structure the CPS, you have to just take that thrust, then you have to put it in a point. For example, structuring the sermon is, see, the body part, I'm talking about the body part now. Spiritual leader. What should be the decision of a spiritual leader? Now your topic will be decision of the spiritual leader. Okay, decision of the spiritual leader. Okay, that is your topic. Now you have to raise a question from CPS. What should be the decision of the spiritual leader? Now your theme says a spiritual leader should decide to study the Word of God, to practice the Word of God, and to teach the Word of God. Okay, so number one will be what? The first phrase. A spiritual leader should decide to study the Word of God. Number one. Okay, then number two, a spiritual leader should decide to practice the Word of God. It is not only study, it is to practice. Then number three, a spiritual leader should decide to teach the Word of God. Okay, so these are the three divisions that you are going to divide from CPS. So step number 2 and step number 5 helps you to do this step number 6. Okay, so in this way you have to structure your sermon. Okay, now come to your text. Now see, this is the bones of the sermon. Okay, bones of the sermon. Big bones are there, then the medium bones are there, the small bones are there. Big bones are introduction, body, and conclusion. Okay, introduction, body, and conclusion. So these are the main big bones. Okay, introduction, body, and conclusion. Now these three has to unified by your text. Okay, for example, Ezra chapter 7 and verse 10. Now we have the introduction part. In the introduction part, you are going to study on how the leader or who are the leaders, and then you are going to study the background over there. Now this background is from the text. Now number 2, body part, you are going to preach from the same text, and you are going to give the application, the conclusion from the same text. So these three unified in the text. Okay, so the big bones are introduction, and in the introduction, when you come for preaching, I will give you more details on this introduction part, how or what you should say. Okay, so we have the pre-introduction, sub-introduction, main introduction, all these things will come. Then body part, main points are there. Point number 1, to study the Word of God. Point number 2, to practice the Word of God. And point number 3, to teach the Word of God. So these are the 3 main points, but out of it you will have the sub points or the transition. Okay, sub point or the transition. Okay, so this is how you're going to structure your text. Now you just go through the format of the structure. Okay, title of the sermon, Bible text, the main introduction of the to the sermon. Then you have all these parts. Okay, you just go through this one, because I don't need to interpret, or I don't need to tell all these things. You know how you should put it together. So using this step, please follow Ephesians chapter 5 verses 1 to 21. Okay, and then keep it, the structuring of the sermon. Okay, at the last I will see how you structure your sermon, and then I will correct it. Okay, that is a part of your assignment. Then the next class we will see step number 7, and this is also a very simple things, but there are some few things that I want to just edit. Okay, since you are preaching the topical sermon and then the textual sermons, you will understand, because every sermon, the way to preach the sermon, it's always same. Okay, it's always same, and then it is just something to be added into this step. Okay, and by this we will end off our class, and then we'll go for anti-archaeology. Okay, so for today we'll just finish up our class, and please get ready for the next class.